Hola, everybody. It is Tanya Hertz. I am your professor at San Diego State University or San Diego Miramar College. I'm also the director of the Rec Innovation Lab. And you can see behind me right now, my screen share is all of our current partners at the Rec. And we're trying to say thank you as much as we can lately. So I'm leaving that background up. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about negotiation tactics. We'll also talk about some different things that we can do in organizations to exert our power and influence. All right. Let's go to our PowerPoint slides and we'll start there. All right, so we already talked a little bit about the different types of power, how we can influence others, but we didn't really talk very much about negotiation and conflict resolution. So conflict resolution is just our ability as leaders to deal with uncomfortable, unpleasant situations as they arise, or basically conflict. And there are 5 primary approaches to resolving conflict: competing, where one party attempts to get his or her goals met without regard for the other person's; avoiding, staying away from the conflict; accommodating, giving in to the other and acting in an unself-serving manner; collaborating, working together to minimize outcomes; or compromising. So everybody loses a little, but in that nobody loses fully. And each and every resolution style has a time and a place that's most appropriate and should be used. And it's just about knowing which conflict resolution style to use and when, and not constantly giving in and acting unselfishly when perhaps you should be competitive and win, right? And crush the opponent. Conflict resolution kind of goes hand in hand with negotiation, and there are different ways that we should approach this. It just depends on the situation. It depends on the relationship that we have with the person that we are in the conflict with. I mean, even like when you're negotiating, let's say, a price for a supplier, you don't necessarily want to always just win at all costs. Now, I love negotiating. Personally, I'm the kind of person that, everybody's always asking me to go with them when they go buy a car, because I just love negotiating. I love winning. I want to leave and the other person to just cry. I mean, but not always, right? Not always. I know that when I'm in a long-term relationship and I'm negotiating with a supplier, I don't want them to cry. I want them to win also, right? I want everybody to be to leave happy. And so you have to really think about you have to think about others. You can't be this like 1980s version of business where it's win-lose, right? So, there's a time and place for all of them. All right. So that said, when we're talking about negotiation, we're talking about coming to an agreement, right? Coming to an agreement. And so the description that I gave about like negotiating for a car, let's say, now that's a kind of that's a negotiation where you'll want to use what we call distributive bargaining, where there's a winner and a loser, and you think of distributive bargaining as a pie. So over here on the left, we have this beautiful triple berry pie, and good job, by the way, Angela, and that my sister made that beautiful pie. So we have this gorgeous triple berry pie. There's only such a big pie, and if one person gets a piece of pie, that means there's not another piece for someone else. So with distributive bargaining, you have a certain amount of pieces of pie, and when they're gone, they're gone. But this isn't necessarily true for the reality of business and negotiating. Most of the things that we negotiate really should be looked at in a more integrative type of mindset. Integrative bargaining is when we're trying to get a win-win situation, and we recognize that there is not just one fixed pie, but there are there are many sources of pie, and if we do this right, we don't have to. I don't have to lose a piece of pie just because you gained one. I can instead of cutting up the pie that we have, we can make the pie bigger, right? And this goes back to being more collaborative over competitive, right? In most of the time in business, if if I succeed, that doesn't mean that you fail. It means that probably you would also succeed, right? And you might even succeed more. There might be more business for you. So I like to give an example like a restaurant, right? You think of a restaurant and you think, let's say I just opened a restaurant in Old La Mesa, and my restaurant is doing really, really, really well, and everybody's coming to eat at the restaurant. Does that mean that I'm taking business away from the other restaurants in the neighborhood? Well, it could mean that, but what it could also mean is that I'm bringing more business into the neighborhood. And that if people can't get into my restaurant and there's long lines there, they might look across the street and say, wow, there aren't lines there. Maybe we should give this other place a try. And we see that happen a lot more in business than that old fashioned sort of, there's what's, if I win, you lose. It's not really realistic. It's not thinking holistically about the problem. So there are 5 typical stages in negotiation. The most important stage is always the first stage, and that's the preparation and planning, right? That's when we're gathering our information, we're figuring out what's our BATNA. BATNA is your best alternative to negotiated agreement. So basically that's your walking point. When am I going to say like, that's too low, I don't want to sell for that, or, ooh, that's too high, I'm not going to pay that. You have to figure that out before the negotiation. Preparation is all about doing your research. If you pay too much for a car, shame on you, right? You should do the research. You should go in as an informed buyer. Okay. Then you have the opening. It's important to set the dialogue, to set the tone, establish the ground rules, let everybody know who's doing what. I do like to go buy cars with if I had more time, but when I had time in life, I would go negotiate with family members and things to buy new cars. I love it, right? I love that whole process. And so in that opening phase is when we just kind of let people know, hey, look here, I'm going to be calling the shots or negotiating, but they're calling the shots, and just kind of letting everybody know who's doing what. But it all goes back to the planning. Did I do the research? Did we find out how much we should pay, what others are charging, et cetera, et cetera. Then you go into the exchange of information, making your case, putting all of your favorable information on the table. Then you bargain. That's what people usually think of as negotiation, is this fourth phase. It's only one small part of it. And then you come to this final part, which is really hard for a lot of people, and that's the closing and commitment. This takes practice. A lot of people they'll negotiate against themselves. They'll beat around the bush. They'll never commit. They'll never close. You have to get comfortable with closing. You have to get comfortable with asking for the sale. It's just so important to practice making that final closing statement. When you're in a negotiation, they want to be in that negotiation with you. They want to come to an agreement. So if you're trying to sell something to somebody, you finally have to ask for that sale. What can we do to close today? What is it going to take? And then, do we have an agreement? And then you shut up. This is so important in negotiation. I don't know how much to stress this. And I've coached so many salespeople over the years. Don't talk yourself out of a sale. Don't negotiate against yourself. Make your offer, make your closing, make whatever pitch you're going to make, and then you shut up. You say nothing. It's a little uncomfortable. It can be. Usually in that situation, whoever talks first is usually the one who breaks and loses and is giving something up. Although, not always. I've talked after long awkward silences and still not given anything up. But don't be afraid to just shut up. I don't usually say shut up, but you know what I mean. You just stop talking. You say what you're going to say, and then you stop. Wait for them to negotiate with you. All right. So again, 5 phases: planning, opening, clarification, um, description, bargaining, and then the final closing phase, right? Yeah. All right. So actually, I'm going to stop it there, where we will come back to talk about ADR and other forms of leadership. Talk to you soon.